the most basic standard thing is you have your learner ask any question within the e-learning module and ChatGPT replies. Now it can reply as an expert on the topic that is being presented. It can reply as their manager. It can reply as their peer. So those kind of roles. But you could create that live conversation where somebody's asking something and getting a response.
Welcome to Making Better, a podcast from Better Everyday Studios devoted to helping small learning teams have a big impact. Today, I am talking to Garima Gupta, the founder and CEO of the award-winning learning design firm Artha Learning. Garima brings over 18 years of diverse experience to the field of learning and development and is passionate about the intersection of technology and education. Currently, she's doing some amazing work integrating ChatGPT into storyline courses, which more people need to know about. So let's dive in. Garima, how are you doing today? Welcome to the Making Better podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And thank you for inviting me to talk to you and your listeners.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think this could be a really great and important conversation for our listeners, because for me, as somebody who's been in, making e-learning, worked in instructional design, worked in all things L&D, I think one of the critical things that always comes up around e-learning is the lack of real learner interaction, right? Where when it comes to we want to test whether or not people actually understand what we're talking about, and the best we often get left with is some form of multiple choice question, and it leaves so much to be desired.
Absolutely. And we can disguise those multiple choice questions in fancy garb. They look like scenarios and whatnot, but they're all pre-programmed. This is, you have to select pre-made choices and you get pre-made responses. And that there was nothing we could do about it till now. But now game is changing. I am super excited about it, just like you are. And I think that, we have future of e-learning standing right in front of us. It's time for us to, grab it.
Yes, exactly. And I think I think that's 100% right. And you're going to talk us through what I love about what you're going to talk to us about today. In a minute, we'll do introductions, but just to give a preview, is it's not some new fancy app that people need to go get, right? It's something that's built in to the most popular learning development tools that we use every day. So it's super exciting. Before we get there, You have a different background than anybody that I've talked to in terms of your pathway into e-learning or into learning and development. You kind of came from software, if I'm right. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you transition into learning and development, because I think it's really relevant to how you're able to do what you're doing right now.
My pleasure. And it's a long story, but I'm going to try and keep it short. Yeah, I trained as a software engineer. In fact, I was part of the team that coded and built the very first short message service center in India long time back. I'm not going to date myself. But what I found always was I liked talking about and demonstrating my code rather than coding itself. And I liked to see that immediate impact. And I miss that in the coding world. Because your code is a little part of a bigger machine that goes in a bigger machine that goes in another bigger machine. You never get to see what your code really did. And I always found that I was a storyteller. So if you would ask me at the bottom of my heart, I feel like I'm a storyteller. So that was it. I was doing okay in my coding job. But as I started a family and had kids and, spend more time with them, I was fascinated by the act of learning in children. When kids learn, young kids, it is so pure, so natural. And, I just loved it. And I thought that my natural fit was to live and work as a catalyst to help someone learn something. So,
I love that phrase. That's a great
that
phrase.
was exactly that sort of made me move career. So I went into K-12 because I thought I was good with kids, but I did not sustain that. I did not have the infinite patience that it needs. So I moved to adult learning, and that was beautiful. I think, I felt like everything was preparing me over my life to get into adult learning. facilitation, then moved to e-learning, which was, as a coder, a natural shift for me. I saw the scale of digital learning, the impact that good, well designed digital learning can have on scale, on
Yes.
motivated learners. And then 6 years ago, started my own firm because I found that this really um, is my jam, I guess.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. Yeah, and that's the thing that I love. It's like that's such a great way to put it. So like this is our jam, and it's kind of quirky, and a lot of people don't understand it. But those of us in the industry, it's our jam. We
Yeah.
just love it. It's great. That's awesome. Thank you for that background, that backstory. I think that was great, and I love that you highlighted storytelling because at the heart of all of this, I think that's such a critical thing. Really, what we're doing is telling stories to help people learn. Like that's really what we're trying to do. That's an
Yeah.
awesome
And
way to
you know
put it.
what? In the middle of it, if you lose sight of that, then your stuff comes out dry. Then it is not
Yeah, yeah,
impactful. So yeah, you're looking at,
yeah.
your tools and your triggers and variables and slide design and graphics and all of that. But the soul is in the story you're telling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's totally right. Awesome. Okay, so then 6 years ago you started your own firm. You had that background in software. We're going to be talking today a lot about how you're utilizing. Well, for how about what is the solution that you created that got us talking? What
Yeah,
what did you do?
so for the learners, Matt and I got talking because he heard about something that we've been doing in this space. Um, and, uh, you know, there is a lot we can do in e-learning. There is amazing, well-made, impactful e-learning out there. But people who are in the field, they feel that, there are limitations that naturally are imposed on us. We cannot have live content. We cannot give proper feedback on open text responses, those kind of, we can't have really authentic assessments without the help of a human instructor. So when ChatGPT came out, me and my team started looking into it. I naturally, somehow my inner software engineer woke up. So we sort of
Yeah,
started
there you go.
uh, doing a lot of experiments, and that became just so exciting for us. It sort of, consumed me in some sense. We created different use cases on how this would change e-learning, and there are other people too in the field who are doing work on this. So that was very exciting. And but I realized that there is a pretty deep level of technical expertise that's needed that usually you will not have. A typical L&D department or a L&D professional might not have that, because we are instructional designers. We're not really
Yeah,
coders, or and
yeah,
there you need a little bit of that. So we then came up with a solution so that anybody using industry standard tools like Articulate Storyline or Captivate or Lectora or Easy Generator could connect their modules with ChatGPT and do anything that ChatGPT can do within that context of an e-learning module. So yes, that has been keeping us very busy over the last few months.
I'm sure. So just to a little bit of backstory before that, had you been doing any work with AI before ChatGPT, or did this, like for so many of us, it was like, oh, this is the killer app, it's just like such a thing to utilize? So was this your first thing, or had you
It
worked on it
definitely,
before?
well, ChatGPT was a game changer, but we had worked on AI powered platforms before. So we used
Okay.
Area 9 Lycum for a project on Amazon AWS Basics for a Japanese materials firm. And that is where the content is present to learner, depending on what AI decides based on how the learner behaves, what are their response patterns. It is powerful stuff. Even when I first saw it, it ensures comprehension, retention. It is basically adaptive learning, but it's like a specific purpose knife, right? It is great for that use case, but it
Okay.
is rather unreasonable or expensive for most organizations to move to a completely new
Yeah.
platform for part of their training
Yes.
needs. And generative AI changes
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, I think that's totally right. And being able to build this into our own systems is so critical. And so the solution that you made is something, it's a module that it's inside of a storyline course, just like anything else. I know you've done a lot of build out with this. So just to give people an idea of some of the things that they could potentially do with this, what are some of the use cases that you've built out already and how do they work?
Absolutely. So it's very difficult to explain this in a podcast without showing it, but I'm going
Yes.
to try my best.
Yes. Yes.
Um, the most basic standard thing is you have your learner ask any question within the e-learning module, and ChatGPT replies. Now it can reply as an expert on the topic that is being presented. It can reply as their manager. It can reply as their peer. So those kind of roles. But you could create that live conversation where somebody's asking something and getting a response. In-person training, we always end trainings from, so any questions, right? And then you have time for that Q&A. That Q&A is
Yes.
missing in e-learning. That now can be, now the
Yes.
same thing can be used for other things. We have scenarios which are essentially infinite scenarios, because instead of choosing from A, B, C predetermined options, learners could write something and then get feedback on that. So it, you could write something else, you'll get some other feedback, so it becomes an infinite scenario, right? um, we've also used it for pre and post assessment, and then giving um, learners a pretty comprehensive sort of report on how they did in the course, which is very, very personalized. We've used it to do assessment on essay type questions based on a rubric. So we send the rubric, we send the answer, and then users actually get a mark that can be then sent to your SCORMA, LMS, or whatever, right? So you can numerically grade a open text essay type question without use of any live instructor. So many different. We've also done another experiment, because one of the questions I kept getting was, well, it doesn't know about my policy, my company's policy, right? If we are teaching code of conduct,
Yes. I.
if we are saying, okay,
Yes.
you cannot accept gifts over X dollars of value, how will ChatGPT know that? So we've done that experiment as well, where it compares the answer to a given policy or a document and then provides its response. So, a lot of different exciting stuff there. The beautiful thing with generative AI is that it is so quite general purpose, right? It's like a multifunction Swiss knife. You could use it in many different ways based on what is your requirement, and the power stays with the instructional designer and the learning specialist, not with somebody who created a specific purpose platform and now you can only use it for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to break down there because I think you're right in that it's tough to think about this without a lot of visuals. It can get kind of technical, but correct me if I'm wrong to kind of walk through it a little bit. So when most people use ChatGPT, if a random person just uses it, the challenge, and that's what people are thinking when they're listening to this conversation. They're just seeing, here's a text box that I type into, and how can I have an exchange that's very deep on something that's specific to my organization? And I think there's several layers to how you do that. And something that I've know you've done is essentially what you're doing is that when the user in the course clicks submit, you're sending a prompt to ChatGPT. And one neat thing about ChatGPT is prompts can get very long. I have actually written prompts. I didn't write them. I copied and pasted them from somewhere else that were like 6 pages long.
Okay.
Because it just contained
Yeah.
all it was. We were making it was basically how to train ChatGPT to make really good mid-journey prompts. Right. And so in order to do that, you have to train ChatGPT what Midjourney is, because it doesn't know
Nope.
what it is, because Midjourney
Yeah.
is very new. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, Midjourney is one of the more popular new
Image
AI
generation.
image generation tools. So you have to teach it what Midjourney is and what a good prompt is. And when in those prompts, like you can say like, the type of camera you want to use, the type of exposure, the lighting, all kinds of stuff. And so somebody out there had written this massive document that was just like giving all of these different use cases. And so inside the prompt, you trained ChatGPT about this new thing that it had never seen before. And now you could get it to act on that information. And so I think how much of your solution involves kind of really good prompt engineering versus is there other stuff beyond
Well,
it?
prompt engineering, as you correctly said, is the biggest thing, right? Because
Okay.
as powerful as AI is, it's still answering your questions. So the better question you ask,
Yes.
the more information and context you give it, the better it's able to answer. So in our experiments,
Yes.
putting ChatGPT within e-learning modules, we figured that it's not only enough to give learner question, let's say in a Q&A sort of application to ChatGPT, because honestly, learners will try to break it. They will write funny stuff. So you got to put context
Yes.
around it in the prompt, right? You got to say to ChatGPT, okay, this is the question learner is asking. It should be about XYZ topic. If it is not, give this answer. If it is this, act as this expert and answer within these many parameters. Maybe this, answer in 5 sentences and answer like a coach or whatever. So prompt is a big piece. There are other technical items as well. You could, using parameters within ChatGPT, define how, for example, creative it should be or not. So those
Mm.
can be
Okay.
adjusted as well. But I think the most important thing definitely is how you're writing your question and then doing a lot of audit. I think the beautiful thing right now is all of us across the board are early adopters, right? So there is a
Yeah.
lot of testing going on. One thing that we have put together with our solution is a sort of a learner analytics report where you get to see what people are asking and what it is responding with, because you need to know that, you're right, what people are asking is
Yes.
important. Well, that's amazing data for any learning professional, is what their learners are asking in an e-learning module, but also what AI is answering, and is it in line with what you want it to answer? Because that is where it becomes a little tricky. We are used to having 100% control on content, and
Yes.
you are sacrificing that in some ways to bring in more authenticity, more um, real time conversational
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
generative work within your e-learning module.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And so, yeah. So I think the key thing there is just one to connect the two things on the prompt engineering. So when the learner is in there asking their question or giving their answer, whatever it is, and they hit submit, you the tool that's sitting within Storyline is sending to ChatGPT a whole bunch of other stuff beyond that. They're saying like answer this question or judge this response based on this
Totally.
context. And that's kind of the context that you're sending as the prompt engineering, if you will.
Totally. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. One question that I have that I think a lot of people would have is security, because there's been a lot of different discussion, and I think your solution maybe relies because you're actually like kind of directly interfacing with ChatGPT via API versus through the GUI, the user interface. Where are we at in terms of security of that stuff that's getting sent
Yes,
to
and that's a
ChatGPT?
great question, because that's something that automatically we're thinking about. It is a machine learning, continuously learning algorithm. It is learning based on all the stuff we are feeding it in the graphical user interface, the GUI. However, in this case, because we're calling the API, ChatGPT, OpenAI came up with its policy in March of this year, 2023. If people listening it to later, um, so data, questions, queries, and answers given via API, those are not recorded. Those are not used for training, and they're deleted after 30 days maximum from their system. So that way, using the
Excellent.
API is way more secure. Now, we've added another layer of security on that because we have our servers on AWS, and they are calling the ChatGPT API, right? So you're not even calling OpenAI API directly, because that would expose your API key if somebody was techy enough to
Mm,
use and look into your code backend. So we've sort of
okay.
put another layer of security on top of it. But anybody who wants to try it, you could try it directly. I would not, and OpenAI itself does not suggest that you directly use its API key in a JavaScript call, for example. And I might be talking gibberish to most of the people here, so my apologies. But
Yeah.
yes,
Well,
it
no,
is,
or
yeah,
yeah,
to
finish. Yeah.
summarize, it is as secure as we can have it at this point of time, because we're calling it
Yeah.
through an API system which has completely different paid secure setup.
Yeah. And so kind of to put I was going to say, as soon as somebody dropped API in JavaScript, a bunch of people were like, "Well,
Yeah,
nope,
I
I don't
knew
know."
it.
But I think the point, just for the learners or for the listeners, and I'm sure there are other people doing this. Like that's a big thing. So essentially, what you're trying to help people with is you know how to do this. You have these modules that can be dropped into Storyline that can call ChatGPT, and you can help people, help companies, help individuals do all that prompt engineering, figure out all the stuff that they need to build around and make it more user friendly for them, so they can kind of be, if they want to be more technical, they can be, but they can also be super untechnical and just know, like, okay, I need to like drop in our policy on X here, and that's all we need to do. And now we have more than options. Because I mean, honestly, I think even the really simple questions of just like, to your point earlier of what's the policy, what's our gifting policy, like what's the dollar limit, simply going from needing to say have options A, B, and C, 50, 100, 150, versus just asking the learner,
What do you think?
what's the dollar limit for policy, and leave it at that. Because even now, like you could have an exact match answer, but what if somebody types out dollars instead of puts a dollar? Like there's just too many ways to mess it up. And so simply moving from specific responses to just an open answer, like that right there is huge.
Yeah,
So anyway, even if you're not
yes.
technical, like
And that
it can be
is
done.
exactly my reasoning and logic behind all of this is, if you're technical, get inspired and try it out. Absolutely, you can do it. If you aren't, you don't have to be. The beautiful thing with these generative AI is that it is so easy. You just ask in simple English, and you don't have to prompt engineering is really like being a manager with a very smart sort of intern, and you have to explain them all
Yeah.
the context so that they can give you a good answer.
Yeah.
So that is what instructional designers and learning specialists anyway specialize in. They are amazing at it. So that is the key skill. You don't have to worry about the technical. I Because my thought process here is, just because it is a little bit technical, people will not try it, and that will be a shame.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me,
Yes.
I think every single e-learning module should end at least with one slide saying, what are the questions you still have in your mind, can we help you with that?
Yeah.
And give some sort of answer, because if you don't answer, people don't want to write a question. They know it's a useless exercise, right? And just that little
Yeah.
thing can come now change that, the human computer interaction, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
it is such a low hanging fruit that we should not as an industry miss it.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. So stepping forward, I guess, a little bit from where we're at today, I'd love to ask a quick question as we get to the end here of, the future. I mean, I keep waiting for Like I'm trying to think of what I think is probably the most likely way that this is going to happen. But when do you are we? It feels like we're not that far from every company being able to have their own chat GPT in a way where it's a pre-trained model that's just sitting there waiting for you to go, and you just kind of dump your company repository into it, and it's now an expert in your company. And it's contained, right? It's not, you're not giving it, it's just, it's in your, it's a AWS
Yeah.
S3 container or something that's just like sitting there. And how far away are we from
Oh
something
my
like
God.
that?
There is, I could probably pull up a horoscope more easily and it will be better accurate. There is no way to
Okay.
say, but the pace is so fast that I won't be surprised. I do think, though, I believe that AI will very soon become so pervasive, just like Googling is right now,
Yeah.
right? We won't even think of it
Yeah.
as novel because it is just so easy. Right now, in my webinars, I find 20 to 30% of webinar attendees haven't even used ChatGPT. And these are people who are coming
Mm-hmm.
to the webinar. So they are actively looking to upskill themselves. So I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
overall, I would think maybe 50 to 60% of population haven't tried it. I think that will change quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it'll be the new Google.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally right. I mean, yeah, I would highly encourage anybody. It's still free, so getting on the basic, just kind of getting on the website, and just I would just encourage, anytime you're going to Google, just like ask ChatGPT
Try
first.
it out.
Just see what it says. Some things it doesn't make any sense to do it that way, but sometimes it does. And there's plenty of and it's only by using it that you start to develop a mental model for what makes sense for using this for and what doesn't make sense to use this for. And I think your analogy was so spot on of the manager and an intern, because so I have a Tesla, and so I'm constantly getting to experiment with
Hmm.
self-driving and experienced the like how it's always 18 months away, right? But when I'm letting it drive, I think it is so the perfect analogy of it's like you're driving with a student driver. It's like, or a teenager. It's like it's hesitating. It's just making decisions a little bit slower than you would. It's like, and so I think when it comes to AI, we often think about like, oh, it's a super intelligent, oh, it's able to do all this stuff. And it's like it can, but but it just doesn't have the experience. It's the most skilled person with no
Yeah,
experience.
I like to tell people that when you're using AI, absolutely try it out. Like you said, before going to Google, just try it out. Just get used to it. It is going to be an important skill in the future. So get on the bandwagon. But think of this. I think the biggest mistake people do is they will use the chat GPT's output as is, right? Think of it as a burger, right? It
Yes.
starts with the bottom
Yeah.
bun, that is your imagination, your prompt, your skill, your questioning, right? Then yes, 80% of your burger meat patty is your AI response. But then that editing that we do on it is again very crucial,
Yes.
right? Because now you're looking at
Yeah.
it, it's like, yeah, it gave me all of this, but it missed out these important things that it couldn't have known or didn't know or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to balance it with our own experience and knowledge of learning science.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this quick walkthrough here. Any particular way that people should reach out to you if they heard this and like, ooh, I need to know more? How should people
Oh,
reach out to you?
absolutely. Connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is not very common, so you should be able to find me. Garima
Yeah.
Gupta, my company, Artha Learning. Artha is actually a Sanskrit word for meaning. So
Oh,
hopefully that will help you remember this a little bit more, Artha. Or write to me at garima at arthalearning.com. Hopefully you'll write that somewhere in the description, Matt. There is no way people can figure spellings
absolutely.
out.
Yeah, no, people, yeah, no, that'll all definitely be
Yeah.
in this
And to
description
all
below.
the
So,
listeners,
yeah.
if because it's so difficult for Matt and I to explain what we are so excited about, if you'd like to see a demo, drop me a line and I will send you a link to our AI demo. Happy.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, this was a great discussion. I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you liked the discussion, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. As a reminder, if your team is struggling keeping up with the training development demands of your organization, we want to help. Better Everyday Studios is a full-service instructional design team that can help you with everything from ideation to actual content creation and delivery. Please reach out to us using the link in the episode notes below. Have a great day.